So my name is Joe Hudson, as you've already heard. My mission in the world is to make self-discovery ubiquitous. And what I mean by self-discovery is what I would call a natural evolution of consciousness until the self sees itself as everything. Right? So identification with the universal. So that's my mission. I do it in lots of ways. I do it through investment. I do it doing these kinds of things. I do it most recently by offering some workshops for people to experience a more relational sense of connection, and that's a lot of what we're going to be doing today. So what I was asked to do was to, great, that's up there. What I was asked to do today was to help find a measurement for what transformational technologies are, right? So think of it like organic standards, right? In 1970s or so, 60s maybe, they had they created an organic standard so we know what organic foods were. And there were certain ways to measure how people were doing their farming practices so that we could see that the food we were getting was organic or not organic. So similarly, what is a transformative technology? And so that's what we're going to be looking for today. But everything starts with an assumption. Even Gödel proved that mathematically in 1930 for you math geeks out there. So I'm going to start with the assumption that transformational technologies promote connection with self and other. Right? So that there's a deeper sense of connection with yourself and a deeper connection with others. That's generally what a transformative technology will do. And so to start off the experiment, what I'd love you guys to do is I'll pull out your phones. Let me see everybody pull out their phones just for a second. And I want you to create an email. And I want you to email that person right there, who's Morgan, who's sitting in the back. Right? And we're going to do this right now. And what we're going to do, just to give you a heads up, we're going to email Morgan our best idea of how to measure that. And he's going to put that in a Google document that he will invite you all to so that you get to see the results of what happens today. And then we're going to go through a series of exercises that deepen our connection with each other and with ourselves. So we're going to do that for maybe 45 minutes, just deepening our sense of connection. And then we're going to come back to it in groups and collaborate on the best way to measure connection. So that's what we're doing. But to start off, we're going to just have, where you are right now, what you think the best measurement for connection is. And I'm going to ask you to do two different kinds of measurements, one subjective and one objective, right? So subjective would mean something that the person would feel. So I feel happier, right? I feel like I'm more connected, so it's in a subjective measure. And an objective measure would be something that the person doesn't have to even speak to be able to, or think to be able to gauge. So maybe cortisol levels, or maybe oxytocin levels, or some brain chemistry, GABA in the brain, whatever you think would be the right mechanism to measure. So I'm asking you to just really quickly throw down that email in an email and just write two forms of measurement, one subjective, one objective, that you think would be great ways to measure connection. You have 4 minutes to do it. I urge you to not do it correctly. Just do it. Don't even think too hard. All right. So it looks like most of you are finished, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about connection and how some of the historic traditions have thought about it. So when I say connection to self and connection to others, I think that's the big difference. And there's lots of ways of describing this. You have some people who describe it as an awakening of the head, and some people describe it as an awakening of the heart, right? But if you look at typically the more Eastern traditions have the story that says we're born in ignorance, and through self-discovery or through discovery, we awaken, right? And the Western traditions say we're born in sin, and we have a lot of words for sin, but in Latin it means without, right? We are born lacking, and it is through a deep love that we are freed, right? And one lends itself more to an outward expression. If you think about the Western traditions, there's more of a saintly expression of giving, of community. And the Eastern traditions, there's more of an awakening expression. Obviously, these two things aren't actually disconnected at all, and to even make a distinction in some ways is a way that separates us from our true nature. But it's important to think about those two things because there are tools that help with both of them, right? There are tools that help us understand, meditation being one of them, how to deeply experience connection with ourselves. But you can meet meditators who have been meditating for 20 years whose marriages are wrecked and the kids don't want to talk to them, right? And there's also great tools about how to relate to one another and how to open our hearts and allow our hearts to break over and over again. And that form of vulnerability also leads to this a crazy wholeness that occurs. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to be doing exercises that kind of are on both sides of that scale. We're going to be doing stuff that is an internal approach and also an external approach, a relational approach with one another. And we're going to go back and forth between them to deepen and deepen our sense of connection. Right? And I think there's a couple things that are really important to state before we get going on it. The first one is that the base elements of both are very, very similar. So what we learned through kind of the insight approach is that in meditation, the most important thing is to not manage the situation, right? And there's lots of ways that they talk about it. They say, okay, we're going to just be the watcher, or we're not going to manage anything, we're not going to manipulate anything, we're just going to be with what is, or just sit. There's lots of ways to describe it. And so that's one of the things. The other thing is just keep a questioning mind, to be in a state of inquiry, whether it's Ramana Maharishi, who talks about Vikar, or it's the Socratic method, or Byron Katie for that matter. We're saying, oh, how do we maintain kind of an open a question in our brain, like how do we stay in wonder and in inquiry, right? Which is also the exact same tools that one would use in the relational approach, right? I can sit across from you, and if I think I know everything about you, I have no inquiry, my heart isn't open to you. But the moment that I'm actually in wonder about who you are and what you have and why you're in front of me, then all of a sudden my heart opens up. That same inquiry tool is used relationally as it is in an internal approach, right? And it's the same thing, not managing the situation. If I'm sitting with Mikey, for instance, and I really want him to do something for me, that's not really the kind of deep experience that I want. If I can just be with him without that agenda, without trying to manage anything, then that connection runs a lot deeper. So they're the same two tools, right, that we use. They're just one is external, one is internal. So I think that's a really important thing to think about as you go through this. And the other really important thing to think about is in all of them, there's these moments when you're in these practices, whether it's meditation or some of the relational practices that we're going to do today, where a fear arises. And the question is, what do you do with that fear? And the fear can arise in lots of different ways, right? There can be fear that feels a lot like fear, or there can be fear that feels like shut down. I'm not going to feel, I'm going to back off, right? So what do you do? And my suggestion is every time you feel any kind of pulling away, right, any kind of pulling away, that you just ask yourself if you can love that, if you can love the fact that you're pulling away, if you can accept that more fully. So as we go through the exercises, just keep that in mind. And the other thing to say about these exercises is there's this one thing that will happen for some of you, and I call it trancing out, which is not like transformational, but more in the transcendent side of transing out. And you'll see yourself kind of, you're not fully there. You're trying to be in the wholeness or the oneness instead of actually being embodied in these experiences. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you find yourself transing out, see if you can bring yourself more emotionally to the table. And that's really the difference. If you're like transing out, one of the things is it's almost like a way to subjugate the emotions instead of to accept them and allow them to be alive inside of you. All right, so that's what I'm going to ask you to really just pay attention to as we do these exercises. So is there anybody who hasn't been able to send the email with the 2 ways of measuring? Has anybody because you don't have a phone? Okay. We'll be in groups, and at some point we can ask somebody to help send your emails in. That'll be great. So what I'd love you to do is break up into groups of 6, and it has to be exactly 6 people, and sit in as much of a circle as you can with 6 people. So find 6 people, and if you don't have 6, if you have 5 or 4, just raise your hand. So first we're just going to clear the pipes a little bit. So what I'd love you to do is just stand up and just shake it out a little bit. Just, you know, the way hippies did in the 60s, remember? Do a little noise if you want, right? Hippies. Yeah, that's right. Excellent. Okay, and now we're just going to do one group yell, just to get it like fully out, okay? This is my favorite part, right? So really let it out, like really, really, really scream. Is there anybody here that would be scared of screaming? All right, cool. So on the count of 3, I'm gonna move my microphone because I will blow out everything if I do this. All right, so 1, 2, 3. Oh, we got to do another one of those. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That was awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay, so sitting back down. Let's see. I am like I'm a sound guy's worst nightmare. All right. So let's just close our eyes and sit with your legs open, just not crossed. It's all possible. And I just take a moment to see what's there. You don't need to deepen your breath. You don't need to feel your body. Just see what's happening. I want you to ask yourself, even in this moment, if you didn't go back in time to find some piece of evidence, and you didn't go forward in time to find some piece of evidence, tell me what about you at this moment isn't perfect. What part of you isn't awake right now? And then take a look at yourself and wonder. What are you curious about? So much of our internal dialogue is about, I shouldn't do this, or I should do that, or I need to do this. And we are so seldom curious about ourselves. And I'm not asking you to find an answer. I'm asking you just to stay in that curiosity. And now see if you can find something that's just pleasurable about your existence. Here you are alive in a room, some guy speaking on a microphone. And there's something pleasurable. Maybe it's your breath or the way your foot feels. And then notice what's your relationship to that pleasure. Does it make you antsy? Does it make you want more? Okay, without any talking, just open your eyes and pick one of the people in your group and just make some eye contact with them. Just direct eye contact. If you have to move, that's okay. Just make it so that you can fully see each other's faces. And I want you to maintain that eye contact. It's going to be for quite a while, so get comfortable. This is where the fear might show up for some of you guys. So notice as you're making the eye contact if there's anything that you're defending. If there's any wall that you have up. How can you more deeply accept yourself and the person across from you? Is there a way to let go of that little bit of self-consciousness that's left? Can you feel that tension between wanting to be seen and not wanting to be seen, and just let that go? What are you curious about the other person right now? About yourself right now? If there's any way you're trying to be right now, can you stop? Can you find the pleasure in this? What's looking out behind your eyes right now? What is aware? And notice if you're trancing out a little bit and just come a little forward. Open your heart a little bit more. Okay, shut your eyes again, back into your internal world. How is it to be with yourself the same way you were with that other? How is it to feel about yourself the same way you were feeling about the other? And again, without going into the future or the past, what's not awake right now? What's not fully alive? And I want you to take a second just to look for the one thing that you don't know. With your eyes closed. This isn't in your brain. This isn't, I don't know, particle fusion. This is, what is it in your internal state that you don't know? What is it that you're unaware of? Okay, I want you to open your eyes and get close to that person that you were. If you have to gently move around, that's fine, but get close to that person you were making eye contact with. Please keep quiet. Just outside of laughing. Laughing's totally fine. Crying's totally fine, but please no talking. And I want you to find one thing that's just a little scary to say about yourself. Just a little bit, not a lot scary. There's something that's just a little bit vulnerable. Maybe something in the present, like I was self-conscious during that exercise, but just something that's a little bit scary, and just want you to sit with that for a minute. feel what it would be like to share that with the person across from you, and then share it. Okay. And just coming to a close now. And just maintain the eye contact. And I want you to notice the difference of the feeling in your body right now to the feeling that you had when you were silently looking at each other for 4 or 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask you to be quiet for the sake of everybody around you. Thank you. Just notice the difference in your body when you were talking, how it felt, and how it felt when you were being present with that person. I'm going to ask you to talk again, but I'm going to ask you not to abandon that feeling of connection when you do. To continue that sense of connection with the person. Maintain the eye contact. Maintain that feeling and speak from there instead of maybe from the anxiety or the social norms. And this time I want you to just share one thing and just keep it to maybe 1 or 2 sentences that you desire, that you want. So before you speak, just let it come to you from that sense of connection. And then go ahead and share with each other. Okay, bringing it to a close. Falling back into silence. Closing your eyes again. Closing your eyes again. And not talking anymore, please. Thanks. How did that feel compared to that moment when you were in that long gaze? Take a kinesthetic snapshot, if you will. Just feel what it is to be in your body now. And again, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, and this time it's just going to be silent eye contact with that person. Where any of that nervous energy can't run. Without any talking. Notice if there's any part of you that wants to present something, be seen a certain way. See if you can let that go. See if there's a way you can open your heart just a little bit more. See if you can release your jaw a little bit. See what's being held in there. Notice if you're transing out, or if you're letting your full emotional life be present with you. And again, close your eyes and take another kinesthetic snapshot of what this feels like. I'm going to walk in front again. What would life look like if you lived from this state of connection? If your conversations with your bosses were from this state of connection? If your conversations with the telemarketers were from this state of connection? And again, just find out where the pleasure is in your body. See what it's like to be in that pleasure. I want you to open your eyes again and look at the person across from you without saying a word. And imagine for a moment that you only could say one thing. You could say one sentence to the person across from you. That's it. So it needed to be the most important sentence. It needed to be the thing that that person needed to hear. It needs to be the thing that you need to say. It's the last chance to do it, so you can't let fear hold you back. Just one sentence. So I'm going to ask you to do that in just a second, but no idle chatter, no diffusing it. It's just that one sentence. And when you're ready, and take your time, go ahead and share it. Oh, that was amazing how many faces just lit up in a smile. So we're going to do an exercise, and it's this weird intellectual exercise about how to measure connection. But if we do it not from this place of connection, it's meaningless. If you create technologies not from this state of connection, it's not going to produce the result that you're looking for. We look at a poet's work, an artist's work, and we know how they felt. We look at Facebook and we know how the creators of Facebook feel. And we're going to do this heady thing, this intellectual thing about measuring connection. Let's see if we can do it from here, where we take every sentence out of our mouths as if it's the important thing to say, not to defend ourselves, not to present how smart we are, how valuable we are. So what I want you guys to do is, in your group of 6, we're going to do one group exercise, and then we're going to have you discuss and come to a conclusion about what the 2 best measurements are that you guys can come up with. One subjective and one objective, as we talked about before. And when you do that, I want you to just allow space between everybody's talking. No talking over each other. No fear that if you don't talk soon, you won't get your needs met. Yeah, so the one exercise we're going to do before we start that is we're just going to stick with the theme, I guess, and just take 30 seconds and just give each person in your group one eye gaze, one connection moment. Just for 30 seconds, and take your time. Everybody will get met. So I'll say, okay, start with person 1 now. And go to person 2 now. Staying silent. And go to person 3 now. And go to person 4 now. And go to person 5 now. Okay, make yourselves comfortable again. Keep your eyes closed. Stay silent. Just real quickly, notice what's happening right now inside of you. Nothing to change, nothing to fix, nothing to modify. And if you put your attention in your ears for a minute, you'll notice some sounds that are occurring, my voice, the air conditioner. But there's also a lot of silence happening on a lot of frequencies, a lot of things that aren't making sound. And see if just for a moment you can pay attention to the silence and not the sound. Maybe it's the silence between my words. Maybe it's the silence at 90 hertz. And just keep paying attention to that silence as I talk a little bit. Imagine for a second that you were left stranded on an island with 10 saints. It was just you and 10 saints. And the thing that made them saints is that they loved you unconditionally. They loved each other unconditionally, and they loved life unconditionally. Sure, they held boundaries, they took care of themselves, but they loved. Now imagine you're stuck on that island for a decade with these saints. Who do you become? What happens to you? As we take this moment to come up with these definitions, I want you to treat each other around you like you're the saints on that island. To be patient. To be in faith. We have about 20 minutes for you guys to come up with two measurements, one subjective and one objective that you agree on. So please go ahead. Chantal, can you just make sure nobody else comes in the room while this happens, if possible? Or Nicole, could you? Okay, we're going to take another break. So, as you're finishing the sentence, see if you can close your eyes and fall into silence again. And being quiet. Closing your eyes. And notice whatever's happening. Allow it to happen, including the annoyance that some guy just interrupted you with a microphone. See what it's like to not fight what's happening in your body. to not need to adjust it. And as your eyes are closed, feel how you want this to be with this group of people. We have about 10 minutes left. And just feel how you want to be and how you want it to feel for others in this last 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, we're going to have the conclusion, so we'd love you to be able to have 2 measurements at that time, one subjective and one objective, for measuring connection. Go ahead and start again. Thank you. So at this point, you should be writing down those 2 measurements. Notice what's happening inside you while this is happening. The voice is all just raised. People are talking over each other. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay, I'm going to ask you to be quiet, to fall into silence. Just close your eyes for a minute. So I want to just say some of the things I noticed walking around is even if we don't have a conclusion, I notice a lot of people learning. I notice a lot of people thinking about their work differently. So staying silent. For those who came in late, there's an email up on the sign. If you can pull out your phone, and you can pull out your phone now if you haven't had the chance yet. And if you didn't have a phone, maybe this would be the time for you to ask somebody for the use of your phone. And just send an email to that. That's going to give you the link to the web, to the Google Doc, where all of this is going to be compiled. And as you send an email there, if you had some ideas that didn't get to the final idea, please put them in so that the whole group can see them. So So what I'm asking you to do, just to say it again, is to send an email to recognitionlabspr@gmail.com, and that way we'll give you access to the Google Doc. That access will allow everybody in this room to comment on the document and see what everybody came up with. And if you had some ideas that didn't show up, this would be a great time to put those ideas into that email. And Morgan over in the corner will compile it for us, and we'll have it out to you guys later in the day. Now, as some of you are doing that, just a quick show of hands of any groups did you come to a conclusion with 1 or 2 measurements? You guys have 1 measurement? Right, that's awesome. You guys have one measurement? That'd be great. So Chantal, could you, get the microphone? So what I'd like is, we're going to pass the microphone around. We have a couple minutes. And I would love somebody from the group to talk about 1 or 2 of the measurements very briefly, and also tell us what was your favorite part of the experience this afternoon. What was the most inspirational part of the experience this morning, I guess it is. Go ahead.
I think the most powerful consensus was around acceptance, a sense of acceptance and the safety, which is the flip side of that. And that becomes a positive reinforcement within the group. And for me, that was what was the most beautiful experience of being in this group.
I've got goosebumps over my whole body from that. Thank you. I'm curious, in the room, how many people in the groups discussed acceptance or safety as part of the, check that out, man. Wow. That's beautiful. Anybody else? Well, we had some consensus here. Could we bring the microphone here? We'll talk to some other groups that didn't as well. And so again, just what measurement did you guys agree on, and what experience in the group was most inspiring to you? It's this group here. Yeah, you said you had 1? Okay. Anybody who has 1, let's... Oh my goodness, hold on a second. I just got to admire that hat. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Nice.
Our subjective measurement was hats. No, our subjective measurement
My wife would agree with you.
was engagement, and our objective measurement was synchronicity of breathing.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And my favorite moment was, 2 favorite moments, telling what I was afraid to tell and receiving what I needed to hear.
Did you get...
We talked about body scanning.
Would you stand up so everyone can just see you?
We talked about body scanning and how comfortable you felt in your body as the subjective, just checking in maybe in your gut and heart, and how comfortable you felt speaking to the person or connecting. And we didn't really get to the objective. We talked a little bit about measuring mirror neurons and things like that, but...
Great. And your experience, something in the experience that inspired you?
Well, I really liked how long you had us eye gaze. I'm a long-time eye gazer, but I didn't, but keeping on was really interesting. So that was really nice. And then this thing about being curious about the other and then turning that curiosity onto myself, about being curious about.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Does anybody else want... Oh, we have some group back there who'd love to share.
So our group also, for subjective measurement, came upon acceptance. And one thing that I would add is we felt unconditional acceptance was really important, because releasing that judgment and being fully open is a characteristic of the open heart space. So unconditional acceptance was what we talked about. And then the objective measurement was kind of a combination or synchronization measurement using EEG brainwave activity and coherence, heart rate variability coherence, and the breath, because that seemed to be universal to all beings, and has been measured in relaxation states and out of other spiritual out-of-body kind of states where we access this unconditional acceptance or love state. So.
Awesome.
And I really appreciated this intermittent 2-minute silent break going back in. I think sometimes when I'm in my headspace thinking, mentalizing, intellectualizing, it's like a muscle. It just kind of goes and goes. So I've never actually had this interruption, but it was nice just to come back into that silent space, heart space, peace space.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I had an experience where I was going to go do 5 days of silence, which I do on a regular basis, and this time I decided to do work for an hour and silence for an hour, work for an hour and silence an hour. And it taught me a whole bunch of new stuff that just straight silence doesn't, because it is that titration. And I learned later that the Tibetan, kind of in the later stages of the Tibetan teachings, they do a lot of titration of going to like the most constricted self to the most open and awake self, and they'll go back and forth. And if you look at the way human development offers itself, often like with children walking, they don't like get up and walk and then that's it. They just keep on walking. They walk and fall down, walk and crawl and fall down, walk, And that titration going back and forth is a really important part of our development. So that's one of the inspirations behind that. Yeah. Okay, this will be our last one because unfortunately we're running out of time.
Thank you. On the subjective side, we live in a world characterized by duality. We are individuals. And what we came to is that the subjective measure of connection is feeling that you do have the same energy as other people. And we talked about love as something, as a theme there. On the objective side, I think it's having proof that you share the same energy. And we talked about a number of different forms of proof. And in this room, I think we probably have collectively most of the knowledge of how to have proof of human connection. But just to list a few, we talked about heart rate variability, EEG data, fMRI data. We talked about breathing synchronization. And then one that was really cool is just reciting the alphabet with a group of people until you actually synchronize. And so I think the bridge is to have that proof from your sensory data or data collected in a computer that we are sharing that same life force in a given moment. My favorite moment was something that my partner Richard said, which I feel like we just shared a lifetime together, on that island, and made a lot of progress from I think both being a little bit closed off to making progress together. And you said something about the subjective measure that I felt viscerally about what that could mean, and I just wanted to share it. That a subjective measure of connection is understanding what it feels like to be safe and courageous enough to take on a goal. Thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. All right, so our time is almost up again. If you haven't sent an email and you want to be attached to the document, be great. I just want to point out something. So we just had a very short hour-and-a-half group experience. But I want you to know that this is possible in board meetings, in programmers meetings. It's possible at city council, presidential debates, as far-fetched as that seems. And I know it's possible because a lot of my world is in this space where this level of connection is what's required and what's wanted and desired. So I want you to know that. And the reason I think it's so important is this industry is going to mature. Some of us will be sitting in a room like this, except there'll be 1,000 people. I've been through industry growth before. And there's going to be a couple billion-dollar companies, and they're going to really want to be able to control the standards of what transformative tech is. And there's going to be money and marketing dollars. This is how things grow, right? The organic standards of the 1960s are not the organic standards of today, right? And changing that is, well, that's something. But there's really only one hope of changing it, in my experience, is to rely on this sense of connection. To create products from this sense of connection, to do business from this sense of connection. This safety, this acceptance. So I want you to know that if you care about the industry, this is the practical action that you can take today and every day. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I really deeply appreciate it. I feel honored. I don't think I've ever been in a room of this many people where you could hear yourself think. It was really quite a pleasure. Behind the email there is a name. I'm doing, for the first time, some public courses. I'm doing 2 weekend workshops in San Francisco. And if you're interested in them, you're welcome to look on the website and find the courses. The courses are designed specifically for people who are doing this kind of work in the world, because if I want to put my time and energy towards a group of people, it's a group of people doing this kind of work. So it's an offering, and I hope some of you can join me. All right. Thank you very much. Oh, one other thing. Mikey, could you stand up? Nora, could you stand up? These two just got engaged. All right. You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very special union for us, actually, Mikey and Nora. Many of you probably know that Mikey helped co-found the first Transtech conference, and so they're absolutely family. So we're super excited about that. And then I plan on being at both of Joe's workshops. I get a tremendous amount of value and learning out of every moment that I spend with him. He's a mentor to me. So if you guys sign up, you'll see me there. So that was great, and we know that there's a ton of brain power in the room, and not every idea was probably fully expressed. It was only an hour and a half, but it was a really good start. We're eager to hear your thoughts, so please tweet. Our hashtag is TransTech. Post on the Facebook page or email us. We're going to have a short break for lunch. We have food trucks outside. And then we'll start the conference. The official conference kickoff will be at 1 o'clock. Don't forget to download Brella so you can connect to one another and set up one-on-one meetings. And I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you. Food trucks are right outside. Vegan options, too. All right, everybody. We'll see you at 1.